Oh boy, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to more esports talk. A drastic update to the story we talked about a few days back, that being the Griffin allegations currently right now are still ongoing. Riot is now also involved, and with Griffin currently at Worlds, they've actually made the playoff stage as well. Maybe not the best press and coverage around this team as the allegations continue to stack up. If you guys missed our first video on this, I will link it down below. The primary allegation coming from a former coach, even his own allegations, was a long list. The main one being, though, about a current player for them known as Kanavi, who was apparently transferred to JD Gaming, and CV Max, their former coach. By the way, he was actually let go before Worlds, then added back, and then let go once again. People were very confused by this. He was then pissed off apparently by player statements saying whatever he was saying was false, and he has now leaked ever more ongoing information out there. The main allegation being about Kanavi and apparently how he was forced into a contract with JD Gaming, a very lengthy contract, which apparently Cho, the managing director at Griffin, alongside their title sponsor Still 8, might have actually forced him into a long-term contract with JD Gaming, also forced him to take a lower salary, thus they would get a higher buyout fee for him. Now, I tried to explain it last episode. If you can force a player to take a lower salary with his new organization, that new organization might be willing to pay a bit more for the transfer or buyout fee, and thus Cho or Griffin would obviously profit more off that sale if they did force him into a contract with a lower salary. It was a very brash allegation, a very serious allegation, which could lead to extortion charges, especially now that Riot is also being involved. Along with that, 2 Korean senators. It just keeps on getting crazier and crazier. And then we have the sponsor, the owner of Griffin as well, that being Still 8. The company came forward a few days ago. We talked about their post. They pretty much said in that post as well, they'd be doing an ongoing investigation of the organization of this transfer as well. What they have now responded with is apparently Kanavi is actually on loan to JD Gaming. He was never sold. There was never a buyout or transfer fee acquired by Cho or Griffin. They were never paid for him. He is, though, instead on loan to JD Gaming, has not been bought by JD Gaming. Even further, though, a further response as well from that former coach, CV Max, who made the original allegations, and the player who was actually a part of these allegations, that being Kanavi. They took to stream to pretty much say, no, that's not true. They doubled down and said that he was potentially forced by both Griffin, Cho, and Still 8 to actually join JD Gaming for a long-term contract, and so they doubled down on that, and apparently he was forced because they accused him of tampering. If you guys do not know, tampering, pretty much vice versa in this situation, whether an organization contacts a player directly or a player contacts an organization besides his own directly, that is tampering or poaching. It's against league rules. Like we talked about in the first episode, it's possible in these accusations, CV Max that actually says Griffin or Cho, alongside possibly Still 8, they accused their player Kanavi of tampering and thus threatened him with his career, and therefore they forced him into a long-term contract with JD Gaming where eventually they might get a buyout fee for him. So those are all the sides we have currently right now. And even further, though, allegations, apparently Riot has now been involved and initially nullified the contract that Kanavi had with JD Gaming. Why this is actually very important is because that's why Still 8 can now come forward and say, hey, yeah, he's actually on loan to JD Gaming. Why they can say that is because Riot nullified the contract for him to be bought out in the first place. So this could be considered very misleading by both Griffin and their sponsor / owner Still 8 if this is true, because they've come forward with their responsive post on the investigation and said, hey, by the way, Kanavi, he's on loan to JD Gaming, because they were trying to kind of slap back at CV Max's allegations. But the reason why they could say that, though, is because what they didn't mention is that Riot possibly nullified the contract for Kanavi to be bought out, and therefore he's just going to be on loan with JD Gaming. If that makes sense to all of you guys, they kind of misled people by not really mentioning the fact that the buyout contract to JD Gaming could have been nullified by Riot, and thus they misled all their viewers by saying, yeah, he's actually still on loan with JD Gaming. He was never sold in the first place when he possibly could not have been sold because Riot said no on that whole deal anyway. And then finally, we have JD Gaming side of things, which again, this situation is so extensive, it's so complex. I'm sure I'll have many videos out there in the future about this for all of you guys. We have all the perspectives. CV Max, his former allegations, he's the former coach of the team. We have Kanavi siding with him in general. We have Still 8, the sponsor and owner of Griffin, alongside Cho, also at Griffin, responding as well. All those opinions have conflicted with each each other. Now we have JD Gaming coming forward and talking about this. They make sure to clarify in their post. First of all, they contacted Griffin first, Kanavi second. It was approved by them, so they throw that out there, and that makes things very interesting because based off what we see so far, Kanavi and CV Max, they said that apparently Kanavi was forced into this because the organization Griffin had accused him of tampering. If JD Gaming comes out and says they contacted Griffin first before approaching Kanavi, that's already a conflict of interest, and this will be investigated because there are so many mentions like that, so many talks about this, so many conflicting points of view where someone is lying about multiple things in this. JD Gaming does continue, though. Apparently, all three parties were present during these negotiations where they actually eventually solidified a 3-year deal. They didn't actually clarify whether it was a loan or a buyout. It seemed more of a loan type thing with Kanavi. He would be going there for 3 years with a $170K salary with a 2-year option on top of that for nearly a $340K salary. So Kanavi apparently was present alongside Griffin and JD Gaming and approved of all of those agreements. That's apparently what JD is saying. I don't know who to believe at this point. And the situation somehow gets hairier as I dig deeper and deeper into this, and if I missed any details, please make sure to comment down below so I can post all the accurate updates for all of you guys. It does get hairier because it seems like JD Gaming obviously want a jungler. They don't want to be left without one because financially, it seems they might be in trouble to acquire any new players out there. If this does fall through, they're left without a jungler, and Griffin is left with a member they might not even want in the first place. It gets even trickier, especially now with the Riot investigation. We look at the fact is this. We look at Flash Wolves. They have a player known as Rather on that roster who is already on loan from Griffin. Where that becomes a conflict is because according to the rule book, you can only have one player out on loan at a time. So accordingly, it might be Griffin trying to find loopholes where they actually put Rather on loan to Flash Wolves, then dropped him from their team. And now, according to their own statements, they also potentially have Kanavi out on loan, which would directly break league rules on top of every other allegation out there. This is pretty extensive stuff. To make matters even worse, though, not only Riot on their rear end trying to investigate the entire situation, obviously by now you guys can see how confusing it is. They want to clear the air on what the heck is going on over in Korea and what they're trying to get done here. We have no idea. Alongside that, we now have 2 Korean senators, the first of which getting involved about this. He actually took via a Facebook post, of all posts out there, to try and clear the air about this and actually fight for Kanavi and, of course, try and fight for the youngster, as he puts it, and clear the air on these unfair contracts and protect the players out there. So I don't know what matters he will pursue, but a second Korean senator is also getting involved as well to try and establish an esports contract, a standard esports contract to be used between teams, so none of this stuff does happen in the future. So there are so many different obstacles, guys, so many different sides. One last time, if you want to leave a comment down below, I would love to wrap this up in future videos as well. Of the sides so far, we have CV Max and Kanavi apparently potentially being accused of tampering, thus maybe extorted into signing a long-term contract, with that being JD Gaming. Griffin, alongside Show and their title sponsor or owner, that being Still 8, have now said Kanavi was never bought out by JD Gaming and they never received a buyout or a transfer fee. He actually is now on loan to JD Gaming, which is in conflict with apparently them having another player already out on loan to Flash Wolves. JD Gaming throughout this entire thing is saying, hey, we'll cooperate. We think we have this player, that being Kanavi, for 3 years, potentially 4 or 5 years if he does want to stay. Guys, we didn't expect this kind of controversy. Riot is now investigating, and then we have 2 more Korean senators saying, hey, let's protect these players. Whenever a senator comes out and says, let's protect the youngsters, it does not sound good for an organization like Griffin, who, by the way, is still yes at Worlds, and all of this probably kind of garnering more eyes towards the entire very complicated situation. As always, hope you guys all enjoy the breakdown of esports and gaming news. For the first time in probably a long time, we are talking about, yet again, some bad player contracts, this time for Korean League of Legends, where Kanavi is now apparently accusing Griffin of forcing him into a long-term contract. If they are found guilty, they are likely to be charged or at least, sued with a lawsuit of extorting a League of Legends player. Until next time, take care of yourselves. I'll be back here sometime soon. Goodbye.